Okay, today we have a client who bought some bar stools and found that they were too tall for the armrests to go under the countertop in her kitchen. So she wants us to cut 4 inches off the bottom of the legs. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is place the bar stools on a nice padded surface on our work table, and we want to make a mark exactly 4 inches above the bottom edge of the leg, and we want to do this on one of the outside corner edges. Okay, now you'll notice that the bottom of each leg is cut on an angle so that the bottoms rest evenly on the floor. And in order to replicate that angle, we make another mark on the opposite leg 4 inches up, and then use a straight edge to draw a line across the legs, and this will give us the exact angle that we need for the cut of those legs. All right, now we repeat this procedure on the remaining 2 legs that are opposite from each other. And when we're done at this point, we will have lines drawn on just 2 sides of each leg. Now, the best way to make cuts on furniture legs like this is, we found that works best using an oscillating power tool with a saw blade, which is not only the safest way to cut, but it provides for more accuracy in cutting at awkward angles, and we have more even cutting edges without chipping. All right, now we place the vibrating blade very carefully on our cut lines and lightly score the line. And we don't want to cut very deep on this. We just want to score it. And the reason why we do this is it creates a track, if you will, for the blade to follow when we begin to cut deeper. And it gives you a chance to easily correct your cut if you find your cutting is crooked. Once we have scored both sides of each leg with the saw, we can then draw a line on the remaining sides of the leg that don't have a line. And we connect these lines at the score marks from the adjacent sides. Now, once we have our score lines carefully marked and placed all the way around the leg, we can now use our oscillating saw to carefully cut all the way around the leg. Now, it's important that when you begin cutting deeper into the wood that you cut from various angles all the way around as you go, or your cut can risk being crooked. This ensures that you have a perfectly straight cut all the way across. Now when the leg piece finally comes off, there will likely be slight cut ridges on the exposed cut. And those can easily be smoothed off with some light sanding. And we like to use a belt sander. It's quick, it's easy, and just touch it lightly to remove any rough edges. Next, we use a regular sander to sand a slight taper on all 4 edges of the new leg bottom, and that gives it a factory smooth edge. Once all the legs are cut, sanded, and tapered, it's time to drill a small pilot hole in the very center of the bottom of the legs, and this hole is for the glides to be nailed into. Now the reason why we like to drill a pilot hole for this is because sometimes we have these nail-on glides that will split the wood, and so it's safer to use a small drill bit that has a smaller diameter than the nail stem of the glide, and only drill in about halfway, and this prevents any risk of splitting the wood when they're nailed in. The next thing we want to do is we place the stool on a perfectly flat surface to test for any wobbles. And here we used a marble tile that's perfectly flat. And once you set the stool on it, you can test for any wobbles if it rocks back and forth, usually kitty corner. And if you do have a leg that's high, you can simply put the stool back on the shop table and use a belt sander to sand down a tiny amount off the high leg and then test it again until there is no wobbly movement. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to stain and finish the bottoms of those legs. And this prevents the wood from absorbing any moisture if it comes up off the floor and makes a nice factory smooth edge. And what we do for this is we use Blendall powder stains. These are easily found on the internet, and we're using the color medium dark walnut. And we use a little bit of clear shellac on a painter's palette. We dip the brush in to get it wet in the shellac and then dip it in the powder and make a small mixture of stain that we can apply to the untreated wood, just simply painting over the bottom, then sliding the brush along the tapered edges to stain them. After we've let the bottoms of the legs dry for a few minutes, we can use some of that shellac and a simple Prevol aerosol sprayer with just a light coat of finish. Now once the leg ends have dried for a few minutes, it's time to tap in the new nylon glides with a hammer. Then we want to test the chair on a flat surface again to check for level for any wobbles. Sometimes the way a nylon glide rests against the wood can cause variations in how level it sits. And if you do have a high spot, it's a very simple solution to just simply touch the glide with the belt sander and take just a tiny amount off the glide, and that usually solves the problem. When it's tested again, it comes out perfect. All 4 stools are now completed, and when the client picked them up, she was thrilled with the results, and nobody would ever be able to tell that the legs had ever been cut down, as they have a factory finished edge on the bottoms. Now that's how you properly cut down the legs on a bar stool that's too high, and you can use this same exact procedure work on any type of furniture.